Hi, I'm Sean Lindemood, and for years people have been asking me what's inside the mask. So that's what we're going to cover on this FabricaShawn Friday. This whole project started with Laguna EM217 wet clay, and I sculpted it up relatively quick, but then I made a mold out of epoxy coat, some freeform air, and epoxamite fast. That same epoxamite ended up in my Underskull. Once I had a mold for the mask, I went ahead and poured in EcoFlex 30. EcoFlex 30 is what this entire mask is made out of, reinforced in certain areas with four-way stretch cloth so that it has rip resistance. I did, however, have some rips over the years that I repaired with silicone adhesive. The silicone rubber part and the dreads, without the dread beads, totals about 5 pounds, which is approximately 2 kg, and needs a support. There's no way this is going to support anyone just putting it on their head and using it as a mask like this. But as you can see, you can move it around quite easily. It can ask, "Kill me." Onto the Underskull itself. It weighs about 1.1 kg or about 2.5 pounds, and this includes the radio, the 3 servos, and a total of 5 batteries and a fan. So with the slush cast, I got a pretty irregular surface here because I hand laid this through the neck hole, and it was actually pretty challenging. Not something I'll do again, because now that I have a core made, I'm going to be able to make these a lot more smooth and real specific to what I want. So as you can see, I start with the entire fiberglass piece, and then I had to cut pieces out, such as the eye hole, the nose, and later the jaw. But the neck had to be trimmed back quite a bit until it fit over my head nicely and without any real issues. So the chin here has actually got epoxy. This is a plumber's epoxy, 2-part putty essentially, covering up all the threads of the fiberglass. And the black is actually Sugru. Originally I was going to go with 4 channels, and the 4th channel was going to be for eyebrow movement. I was under a perceived time constraint, so I ended up not doing that. And as you can see, I cut back pretty wildly on certain parts to make sure movement on this side is actually reinforced with, this is all wire hanger, and this wire hanger coming out, and then the joints are aluminum. So with the teeth, these are all polyurethane plastic and then drilled to fit in. So the teeth are removed to install the mask. The actual rubber goes over everything. The jaw portion is actually moved with my jaw. So this moves with my jaw, and the rest are cable controlled. One of the upgrades that I had done is actually move the halo to mount on the side, so it actually is mounted properly and it is quite a bit more comfortable now. Originally I had a block on top, which was a pressure point, and was very horrible, and it hurt quite considerably. The jaw movement is kind of a standard 2 straps of aluminum bolted and reinforced with epoxy, bolted through, and then there's the bolted through on the hinge. You see the cable movement clears everything there and is held in place with the epoxy. The power switch I installed at the base. You can't switch this through the mask. You have to fit your hand under and turn it on. But that's been a good choice. And what you're seeing on all this surface is actually silicone from where I had glued the mask to the surface. Especially where the dreads are concerned, this stuff needed to be glued really securely so the dreads didn't pull away. And this is a dread hole right here, selected for an exhaust fan. This exhaust fan blows through, and the only other air intake is the eyes at that point. So it's blowing out the back, and fresh air is coming in through the eye holes. I'm going to go ahead and show you this cutout right here and how I ended up working the mechanisms through that hole. So I have 5 screws here that I just removed, and then the cover comes off. There's 5 tabs that are screwed and glued in some of the cases, and others just epoxied. I say glued, it's epoxied. You see the 3 servos. These servos are bigger, cheaper ones, so I needed strong, but I didn't worry about sloppiness, so that's why I was able to get away with cheap ones. The one controlling the main mandibles is actually a single one moving both mandibles, and I'll show you here in a moment when I turn everything on. And each one of these is the upper mandibles, so I have the 2 upper mandibles separate and the main mandibles are connected. So here I have the 4 AA's for the receiver. The receiver is actually tucked up under there really nicely, and it's actually smaller than the 9-volt battery that's right there powering the fan. The fan has to be plugged in before putting on because I haven't run a switch. Subsequent designs are going to be different. So everything's velcroed in place. That's going to end up needing to be removed. So all the battery packs and even the receiver are velcroed in place so that I can actually work through the neck if I need to replace batteries or such. I used a 4-channel radio that I removed the springs from one side because that movement and that movement move independently. So the force that actually is exerted on the with the silicone is enough to make that kind of a difficult movement. So what I ended up needing to do is actually put a spring counterbalance inside it, which is a little bit weird because that's like right in front of my face, but it allows for more force to be used without using the servos for it. I'll end up doing that a little bit different design because it's a pusher design. It's not quite as strong because of where the force goes. Under the jaw, you see where the mandibles are run and secured in place through wooden support and epoxy, where the 1 channel moves both of the cables across my face through the jaw. So the aluminum rods here are actually to stop the movement of the jaw. So the movement of the jaw while in the mask will naturally stop where it needs to be. So that will stop there, and then when my jaw moves, the movement can be seen through the mask. Some of the maintenance issues I've had over the years are some of these mounts have come loose. They're just epoxied in place. Going in there and actually screwing them in a little bit more securely is probably a good answer. The next iteration will have a much more refined tray. So these cables here are actually from a company called Dubro, and they actually have components that fit in each other so that this cable has a housing that's actually able to fit in another housing and become the cable depending on your use. So the cable here, I actually have to solder on threaded ends to screw into the ball joint connectors and make sure that's secure. One of the things that happened over the years was one of these connectors came loose. So I had to, that was one of the maintenance items I had to do when this was apart. I believe that covers everything that I can think of. If you have any questions, leave them down below. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them the best that I can. Thank you for viewing, and obviously if you watched this long, it was important to you, and I really appreciate that. So we'll see you next FabricaShawn Friday.